Fantastic. Thanks, Graham. Okay, welcome everybody to this morning's Strategy and Policy Committee meeting for Tuesday, the 21st of July. We'll just start with health and safety. I know that most of you are familiar, but should there be any sort of emergency, exiting through the door to my left or the door that you came through and meeting outside in the car park near the St John's building. Are there any apologies for this meeting? I have received an apology just for Mari, who is departing to speak at the Amberley Friendship Group and will then return. So Mari will leave just prior to 10 and be back around morning tea. Are there any other apologies? Graham, can you just direct me? Do we need to approve that? Process?
So, Madam Chair, sometimes we just kind of note it, but informally in the committee we must.
Sure, okay. So I will move from Chair that we accept the Mayor's apology for that interim break. Can I have someone to second that? Thank you, Chris. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, abstentions, carried. Okay, are there any conflict of interest declarations in regards to today's agenda? Fantastic. We do have a recording device and we are being live streamed as part of that process. Is there any announced urgent business? Thank you. Okay, moving on to the minutes of the meeting of 12th of May on page 3 of your agenda. So we'll just do a quick page turn for any amendments to those meeting minutes. Page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, fantastic job on the minutes. Is somebody of a mind to move those as a true and correct record of that meeting? Thank you, Brett. Can someone just second? Thanks, Mari. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? Abstentions? And that is carried. Just doing another page turn in regards to those minutes for any matters arising. Page 3. I just will note there the final environmental scan. At our last meeting, we agreed that we would receive the updated scan via email, which we did, and there was no feedback that I saw through that email chain. So just perhaps to note a thanks to the team, and that's now available on the website. Page 4, 5. 6, 7.
On page 6, if I may, Chair. Councillor White, thanks. We thank Angela Clifford and the last portion of that paragraph 1, the second paragraph down. This would help determine current involvement levels and decide whether to increase participate and resources to dedicate. Have we stepped any further, and has there been any movement on that?
Well, you will note that later in the meeting we do have Jackie Rose coming to speak to us about food security, and that paper is seeking for us to appoint somebody to become a member of the Food Secure working group. So that's under decision item 2.2.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Anything to add to that? Page 7, 8.
My favourite on page 8, I may have see he's not here, but I know he's written in regard to Purple Willow to Environment Canterbury to highlight that with Environment Canterbury. So I guess there might be some action beyond that, but it's certainly a letter of advocacy has gone.
Right, thanks for that update. No?
Madam Chair, I have another query. It's just, I'm sure it's later in the meeting, but at the bottom of the bullet points, members noted the strong alignment between the age friendly, etc. The potential for the older community members to contribute to continuing knowledge and lead programs was highlighted. Are we going to revisit that at all as well? That was the question I had.
So you're on page 8,
Yes, I am.
halfway down.
That's correct, yes.
This looks from
That reference back to with Rose, do you think?
Jackie, you mean?
Sorry, Jackie Rose, sorry.
Potentially not. However, I mean, my take on that statement there was that, you know, we were wanting to just ensure that there was that that contribution or that collaboration between young and old, and I certainly know that that's certainly happening with a number of initiatives across the district. One being the community garden, another being the potential expo that the youth council are keen to get involved in. But anything to add to that, Julia?
Yes, Madam Chair. Also, the project which is down by the Emily Domain.
Oh yes, the planting project
That the
and
youth
the
council-
little strip of land.
My understanding was that there was some discussion about involving older persons in that project as well.
So great question. It does feel like there's some natural alignment that officers and the whole team, in fact, just seem to ensure happens there. So that's
Okay.
good.
Thank you. Thank you,
Good to
Chair.
keep that in sight. Page 9. 10. Okay.
Can I refer back to page 9, please, Chair? I do apologise, I sound like a squeaky wheel. I was waiting to get referred back to Water and Land Coordinator will discuss further with me. I've yet to have that discussion, just so it's noted. Sorry, bottom of the bullet points, it says Councillor Carthy asked whether the nursery blah, blah, blah. I have had some contact, but not with the Water and Land Coordinator at this point.
Madam Chair, we'll follow up on that.
Thank you, great, because I've had other things active over with the garden in Waikato, and they've accepted the opportunity to put in an eco nursery next to it, and their committee's approved that, and we need to just follow through with it.
I will definitely follow up on that.
That'd be great, thank you very much,
Yep, happy with that.
very much so.
Right, okay. With there being no further matters arising, then we'll move on to our first decision item. Item 2.1, page 11, the review of the operation of drones over council land policy. So Helga, welcome to the table. And I'm just going to hand straight over to you. Thanks.
Good morning. This report seeks approval for the revised operation of drones over council land policy. And the current policy was adopted by council in May 2020 and was due for review in May 2025. The revised policy's been restructured to follow an amended policy template and also sets out some additional limitations for specific reserves in the district due to the location of aerodromes. So the rules for drones are set, monitored and enforced nationally by the Civil Aviation Authority. So council's only role is as a landowner, and the rules require anyone operating a drone to seek permission from the landowner. So this rule means that each time an operator wishes to fly the council-owned land, they're required to seek council's permission. So in the policy in 2017 streamlined this responsibility by providing a blanket permission for operators to fly drones over council reserves, provided that the flights are undertaken in accordance with the civil aviation rules and the additional controls outlined in the policy. So just want to be clear, the policy only applies to council-owned reserve land. If you want to fly over a road or council buildings or cemeteries, then they need to apply for separate permission to do so. As I said before, the main changes to the policy are in terms of additional limitations for specific reserves. So the civil aviation rules require that if you want to fly within 4 kilometres of an aerodrome, you either need to meet the specific requirements pointed under paragraph 11, or you have to conduct a shielded operation. So to conduct a shielded operation, you need to be, your drone needs to be within 100 metres of and below the top of a natural or man-made object such as a building or tree. And the drone also needs to be operated outside the actual boundary of the aerodrome. So there's 3 aerodromes in our district. The Hamner Aerodrome located at 561 Hamner Springs Road, the Hamner Medical Centre helipad in the Hamner Springs Sports Reserve, and the Cheviot Heliport in the Cheviot Rugby Club grounds. So effectively, when you look at those locations, that means that 4 kilometres within those areas cover the entire of the Hamner Springs village and also the Cheviot Township, which means you're required to conduct a shielded operation if you operate in any reserve in those areas. And also, it also means you can't then operate a drone within those reserves. So I've included those 2 reserves in the areas where you're not allowed to operate a drone. And then also under the provisions for permitted operation, I've also included that within Hamner Springs and Cheviot, all flights must be conducted with 100 metres of and below the height of trees or other structures.
Yep.
Sure, sorry, it's just that I want me to get away in a minute, but helipad, I don't know if this is just a revamp. There's a helipad at the Waikari Village Green, just below the medical centre. And also, it's not a registered helipad site, but a helicopter would land in the Harden domain if it needed to under emergency, whatever. Does that just get, I think they're 2 different issues, but
Yes, through
I
the
think, yeah,
through the
Waikari, I'm sure it does have a below medical centre, so I just don't know whether it's not a fancy one like Cheviot and Hamner Springs, so I just don't know whether it needs to be identified there or not.
I was going to ask a similar question in regards to this one at Rita, but maybe it's not official. The CEO looks like.
Depends on the formality of
Yeah.
the helipad and the informal use, then they don't have the same restrictions.
So through the chair, aerodromes are those listed in the New Zealand Aeronautical Information Publication, and that only specifies the 3 uncontrolled aerodromes in our district.
Chris.
Question, are we operating under the 500-foot legislation in the CAA? Is that where we're operating? Up and above 500 feet? Do the drone legislation falls under a different ledge with regards to that? So we're only working under the 5, Hamish is nodding his head, yeah.
120 metres, yes.
Yeah, so it's the 500-foot legislation above ground, designated ground. Okay, that's cool. I just need to know just because in my head. Yep, no, that works. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Through the chair, just a quick question. Permission to fly over, say, for example, council area, an application is made. How is that recorded, and does it differ from getting permission from a private landowner to fly over there, and how is that recorded?
Through the chair, there's a new there's an online application form that goes to, I understand it will be going to Josie Hemmings now. It used to be Daniel Blair, but he's since left.
So that is flying over council property.
It's flying over any other council property that's not reserve land.
Does that differ from gaining consent from a private landowner?
Correct, yes.
And so how is that gained and how is that recorded if there is any issue afterwards?
In terms of council land?
No, private property, I think.
It's nothing that's dealt with by the CA.
So we don't have any input. Okay, all right, thanks. Thank you.
The only other change was to include that the council staff and Kaikoura Huranui Water Service staff were excluded, exempted from having to comply with the policy. So that's set out under the scope policy. Any other questions?
Yeah, just on point 9, good to see that there's no complaints about drone usage, so I guess that means that things having smoothly. I do see though approximately 5 applications received per year for activities outside the permit policy. Do you know off the top of your head just what those activities are, and is there something that we can sort of include in it so that we don't need to, people don't have to make an application each
Through
time?
the chair. Yes, Daniel Blair did send me some examples. 2 of them were flying over events being held at the Embley Domain. I think one was to fly over a river. And then there was one to fly over a road to look at possibilities for slips and that sort of thing.
It's quite varied.
You're quite diverse. Yeah.
Okay, anything else to add to the summary of the report, Helga? Thank you. Summed it up fairly well, and it's fairly clear in front of us. Good to have the new policy alongside the old policy so that we can make comparisons. Are there any further questions or queries? Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So your moving officer recommendation in its completeness, the adoption and the authorisation. Is there someone of a mind to second that? Thank you very much, Chris Scarlett. Any further discussion, questions? Anyone speaking for or against? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? Carried. Thank you, Helga. Very straightforward. Thank you for the thorough report. Makes life easy. Okay, and I'll welcome Jackie Rose to the table to talk about food security. This is a bit of a follow-up from Chris, as you questioned Angela Clifford's presentation at our previous meeting back in May.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. So I'll assume that the report has been read. I'll briefly highlight the food security work taking place across the Horonui before explaining today's recommendation. So as the Chair said, the recommendation is following on from Angela Clifford's last deputation. It isn't asking Council to establish a new program or commit any additional funding. It's simply asking the committee to appoint one elected member to represent Horonui District Council on the proposed Food Secure North Canterbury Working Group. Quite a mouthful. To strengthen our regional partnerships and ensuring Horonui has a voice in future food resilience planning. Before I talk about the recommendation, I'd like to provide a little context. When people hear the term food security, they often think of food webs. While they are an important part of the picture, food security is much broader than emergency food assistance. It's about ensuring people have reliable access to healthy food while building a resilient local food system that supports communities every day, particularly during times of disruption. Nationally, at the moment, around 1 in 3 households experience food security. Combined with increasing food prices and continued growth across the North Canterbury district, we're seeing increasing pressure on our local food systems. What I've learned in this role is that food security touches education, health, wellbeing, social connection, and emergency preparedness. It's much more than simply putting food on the table. So my role at Council isn't to deliver the food assistance. My role is to facilitate, connect, and enable community-led solutions. So we bring organisations together, strengthen partnerships, and improve coordination, so communities are better placed to respond to local needs themselves. One of the rewarding parts of my role is seeing what can happen when we get the right people and that are simply connected around a shared goal. Often our greatest contribution isn't funding, it's just bringing those people together. So I'm going to talk to point 6 to point 10 in the report. So council, through a variety of different councillors and officers, have been involved with Food Secure North Canterbury for 6 years. What I value about this partnership is its whole of system approach. It looks beyond emergency food relief to everything from local food production and education through to food rescue, distribution, partnerships and emergency preparedness. Working together regionally allows organisations to share the ideas, avoid duplication and identify opportunities that wouldn't happen if we all lived in isolation. So the regional partnerships that have helped strengthen several initiatives here in Whirinui, which are outlined in points 14 through 24 of the report. I'd like to briefly highlight 3 examples. So we've got up here the Emberley Community Garden that's most recently been established. So how this came about was following last year's Food Secure North Canterbury Forum. Local residents came together with a shared vision to create a permanent community garden and food forest here in Whirinui. Council and myself have played a facilitative role through this project, while the community has provided the leadership, energy and ownership. We've seen volunteers, local businesses, elected members and community organisations all contributing to bring that vision to life. Standing at the community planting day and seeing more than 70 people turn up on Sunday morning really reinforced to me how much people value the opportunities to connect, contribute and to build something together. So yeah, that was a really, really proud moment. Secondly was the food in schools in the Maiden Power Pantry, points 16 to 21. So these programs now support 13 schools and 12 early learning centres. Sorry, I've got that wrong. 13 schools and early learning centres with 5 Main Power Pantry freezer locations across the district. Together, these programs ensure children have access to healthy food during the school day, while giving schools a practical way to support families experiencing hardship. What's particularly encouraged me is that schools are using these as a platform to provide food, but to also build relationships with those families and to connect them with wider support before challenges arise and become crisis. Finally, our food banks, points 22 to 24. So some of the stats that are in the report will have been updated as I've just since had some updated through from other food banks. So food banks do continue to play an important role within that wider system. As at July, they had distributed 929 food parcels for the year, supported more than 3,200 people and provided the equivalent of over 54,000 meals. While those figures demonstrate ongoing demand, they also reflect the strength of collaboration between food banks, schools, health providers and community organisations. One thing that's really stood out to me is that our food banks do much more than provide food. They often become that trusted doorway to other support, just like the schools that we've got with those pantries as well. And it's those relationships are really, really important with a real pastoral care and is able to connect them with other services that they may not have approached. So why this all matters? When I step back and look across all this work, there is one common thread. It isn't just about food, it's about resilience. The relationships built between schools, food banks, growers, volunteers, community organisations and local businesses strengthen our communities every day. Those same relationships become invaluable through floods, supply chain disruptions and other emergencies because they're already established before they're needed. Communities don't become resilient through an emergency, they become resilient beforehand, and that's exactly what this work is helping us achieve. Today's recommendation is simply to appoint one elected member to represent Whirinui at the governance table. It aligns with our enabling community strategy and ensures Whirinui has a voice in shaping regional food resilience. I'd like to reassure the committee that this recommendation does not require any additional operational funding. The work outlined in this report will continue through existing officer facilitation, community partnerships, volunteers and external funding. Today's recommendation is simply about ensuring Whirinui has a seat at that table. so that we can continue contributing to a stronger, more connected and more resilient North Canterbury. Thank you, Chair and councillors. Happy to answer any questions.
Oh, thank you very much, Jackie, for that fulsome report and for the dialogue accompanying it. We'll just go quickly to questions. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report. It's excellent. I have some questions. With the food bank system that we've got, I mean, I'm presently involved on the sideline with the Waikare Community Gardens, and we're in the motion of linking that with other things as well. That's a process. When we get these gardens operating, are they going to work together independently or independently? Because you've got the Amberley one and the more mature one down up in Waikare, you know, are they going to continue working separately? I know there's a lot of politics within them, but I'm just curious about the growth of that.
The thing with it being a community-led, it's not an organisation, community-led initiative, is that it is really run by the community. We've sought initially some guidance from Winton, because obviously he'd done the Waikare from its inception. It would be great to be able to work together, to sort of, you know, learn from what's been happening and what's worked well, because I know that there are other community gardens. There's also other community gardens that haven't operated terribly well and have lost a lot of momentum. So that's kind of, I suppose, where it's been that I've had some input with establishing it, to try and ensure that we've sort of got some momentum and continuing with the volunteers and whatnot. But it's also to make sure that we're linking in people, because there's no point if duplicating things or getting things you know, glaringly wrong when it's already gone really well somewhere else. They've learned from experience. So I would like to say that it is done together. There is also a wider community garden group, which is an organisation that's run out of Christchurch, but that is supporting. We have had input in. They provide resources to all of the community gardens. So yeah, ideally not done in isolation.
Okay. The other part of that question,
If I can just add to that, Chris, too, we've also had connection, particularly with the Amberley Community Garden, as well as looking to Winton for some advice and information. We've also had connection to Waimakariri with Councillor Brett Cairns, who's been really supportive as well. And he's you know, been involved with the Hanmer Food Forest as well. So yeah.
Thank you for that. The part I am is because you know, this is an area I've helped with Satisfy. I know those people well. I am aware. The other part there is that I keep an eye on the community garden in mind, because that's my ward in Waikare. And as we go forward, I'm just wondering if the ability for us to supply seed banking would be something we'd need to look at for the future. If we're going to stick to securing our food source, start at the beginning. I mean, the rest of it, I understand the social implications, I understand the community and the ability to meet people over the garden and the likes. And also, I know some areas are presently working on feeding, at least in my community, the church once a month goes into the Waikare Hall, you're probably aware of it, and feeds the community, and a lot of it it's starting to trickle out of the garden. Politics have slowly been put aside and they're moving forward. Are we seeing that in other communities?
Waikare is definitely doing it well. I've got a really good relationship with the Waikare Food Bank, and the community lunches that have been happening there, which is really encouraging. What would be awesome to be able to do is to have, I mean, we're talking about education and workshops. We had a community garden meeting last night where we're booking in grafting workshops, seed growing.
Kumara growing workshops.
In South Island, wow.
Yes,
Okay.
it's quite successful in the local area. Speaking from experience.
I'm a 1200, so it doesn't grow there, but we tried.
So it's definitely not just planting, it's teaching people, it's getting the young people in, it's getting the intergenerational, you know, making sure that we're getting those people that have these skills already to be coming in. So whilst it's about connection, it is also around education and trying to improve that, you know, so we talked about the seeds
Yeah,
last night too, didn't we?
yeah, so there are 3 initiatives that the Amberley Community Garden Group have planned for September, October. 1 being the grafting workshop, 2 being the kumara growing workshop, and 3 being the kind of seedling workshop as well. But in addition to that, I'm aware that I'm not sure if it stretches right across the district, but certainly in the Amberley area, the waste minimisation educator has a seed bank initiative that's run for the past 4 or 5 years from the library, where people can take in their seeds and other people just come in and help themselves. So there's a desk and envelopes, and it's just take. And I'm not sure if that stretches further, but
No, it doesn't come up our way. I was totally unaware of the library connection. That's something I will share with
Yeah.
Surrey and all the others at the
Yeah.
garden.
and I guess that given that that is in place, if it's something that there is a need or a desire for in another part of the district, then that could easily be replicated, and it works very well, is my understanding.
The other question, if I may, through the chair again, is with regards to the school side. Obviously, we're going to track children in to learn how to grow, the usual thing that we're seeing nationally at the moment. Is there any way we can connect our organically grown or our well-grown vegetables into their lunching system? Was that just
You
your
meaning
eyes just said
You
it.
meaning for the food in schools
Yeah.
program?
Or is that just a gate too far?
I mean, yes, it's almost, I don't know how we would get there.
Yeah.
And that might be something that could be a next step. I mean, we do have the facilities to be able to store them. We've got the freezers at the area schools and at Amberley in the preschool. So there is certainly the option to be able to do that. It's just the how at this year. I mean, I would love to be able to do that because a lot of the demand that's happening for the main power pantry is family meals.
Yeah.
So there's another step in there.
Yeah, I hear you. That's, ideally, I'd love to see that too. I think it would just solve a huge amount of our social problems, as well as the kids getting fed before school, at school, whatever it be. Okay.
I think it's important to distinguish the food in schools program that is promoted and provided through our council and their partners from the government food in schools, because in the Hiranui there is no government food in schools.
No, I understand. Thank you, Chair. I do understand that, and I'm thinking because at the Hiranui College they've got a really good kitchen system there, a really excellent position and equipment there. That I'm looking 5 years ahead. I'm just thinking, is it a possible? How do we start that journey to get there?
If I may, through the chair.
Absolutely.
I also have a really good relationship with Satisfy, so I'm getting a lot of excess goods, and I've got sort of a list of things, and often they will contact me and say, hey, we've got a glut of this, is there anything that you can use it for? So there's some relationships that I've got that are really, clever and resourceful. Kelly at the Amberley preschool they're very clever with, being able to cook, and obviously same at Hiranui College, but it's just also probably the timing thing. I know the situation at Hiranui is that most of them are teaching staff now, so there's not a lot of extra time to be able to, actually say, hey, we've got 10 pumpkins, what can you do with it? But sometimes it's, I guess up to the school to be able to then say to parents or the community, have you got the capacity to be able to do this?
Judy, Board of Trustees discussion as well.
And then there are food safety issues as well, speaking from an educational perspective.
Yeah.
So it's not unsurmountable, not at all, but it's quite a process.
I just think when we're looking, Chair, I just think as we're looking forward, inflation is going to be marked at 4% today, according to the government. Our dollar's dropping against the international market, and things are getting dearer and dearer for people who are on low income, struggling with a large mortgage. And I think that's the community we're seeing that are hit by tax very hard, who their children are suffering. And I just think we've got an abundance in certain areas. It'd be nice to figure out a nice way we could get it to our communities. Families, as you pointed out, it's mainly families who are suffering. It's a worrying progression, isn't it?
It is, and that's why I think that that key education that can happen through and with community gardens, partnering with schools, and actually teaching our younger generation, transferring that knowledge from those who know to our younger generation, so that they understand how easy it is to grow food. And that whole garden to table thing is certainly something in the community that I work in that we've focused on.
Can I ask a question? We're seeing our age older, I don't know, it's me who's grey heading that way. For our older community, they're interacting with our youth in the gardens and sharing? Are we seeing a lot of that?
Well, in fairness, we've only had we had an open day and then we had the planting day.
Yes.
Both were really encouraging, weren't they? The span of ages was quite interesting. So we had quite a lot of representation from Emberley School and Leithfield School, but then we also had people coming from the retirement village. I've got a really, we've had quite a lot of support with the Lions as well. So, it was quite interesting in terms of the different age spans that were actually there. And even a few people that weren't interested in doing the physical, but they were just, sitting around and having a cuppa and
sharing knowledge.
Yeah. So it was really heartening actually. And we tried to make sure that if we're promoting anything, that it's not just done on Facebook. So through the hotline, we've got emails, we've got cell phone numbers, we've got phone numbers that we can make sure that we're connecting the full database.
Thank you.
Okay, so any further questions of Jackie in regards to report? Chris?
Sorry, back in slide, figures of number of meals that have been provided. Sorry, on there, food supports across Huranui, and I was sort of trying to roughly do the maths on it, but it did seem quite a lot per day or whatever. So yeah, appreciate the work that's going in. I just wondered, just when you talk about food support, how wide does that range? Is that just food being parcels type thing, or are we talking, Meals on Wheels, that type of thing come into it?
No. Sorry, through the chair. How this statistics is through the food banks. So we've got 3 in the district that do support district wide. As you'll see there, obviously the majority are those 4 that is listed in that pie chart. But also where the locations of the food banks are, Emberley, Waikato and Waikari, it's obviously is the highest sort of in terms of demand. So these, generally speaking, will be through food parcels, and the meal equivalents kind of tell a little bit of a different story, because a family makeup might be 1 person and that's a food parcel, but then a family makeup might be 10 children, and so the equivalents will look quite different for different makeups. I have previously mentioned that there's quite a lot of support through some of the bigger church communities, which some of them have quite large families, and so those meal equivalents can quite quickly go up quite substantially. They do also have a relationship with Satisfy, so sometimes there is excess food, and so there will be a higher number of meal equivalents, which may not be reflected in a food parcel. It might be that it's a top-up situation, or that they've got excess bread, so that they've been able to then go and do some top-ups here. But no, that doesn't include a Meals on Wheels situation. It will include the community lunch that they have in Waikari, but that's only throughout the month.
Thanks, Georgie. Okay, so if we look back to the Office of Recommendation, and we're being asked to receive the Food Security Update Report and to also appoint one elected member to represent HDC on the Food Security North Canterbury Security Working Group. So, guess that's where the rubber hits the road. Is there anyone who is keen to be that elected member?
Well, I'd be happy to put my name forward. I'd understand there's probably a few others that would like to. That
I'm
might-
happy to put my name forward as well, but
Okay, so Brett is interested, Chris is interested. I'm also going to put my name forward
I'll-
because I'm already involved with Food Security North Canterbury.
I'll tell you what, I'll step back because I'm already heavily involved with Waikari and with the board adjustments and all that. And that will morph into what you're doing in a shorter time. So if I step back from that and concentrate on my corner to hand across and be liaised with that. If the chair's happy with,
If you're comfortable with that.
I'm more than comfortable, Chair, with that, yes, absolutely.
I mean, I think I'm heartened by the fact that we've got so much interest around the table, and you know that really I hope Angela's watching. It really shows, you know, our dedication to food security, and that while this is a small step, it's a really important one. So yeah. So how do we go about?
Well, I was just going to mention, for purposes of, I guess, of moving things along, I'm happy to step aside if you're already involved.
Just before we do, is there a reason why we couldn't have two members? Or, I mean,
It's a good point. I could be a backup if you
Well-
weren't available.
No, there's not. I mean, it's lovely to have more than just one Hiranui member around the table. I sit on the Food Secure Working Group, and only recently, obviously, Angela's joined. It's me amongst a whole lot of Waimak people. So it's actually lovely to have more than one around the table, and if that would kind of work for you.
look, I think that that's a brilliant idea. I think that we could do it collaboratively, and I think that that's you know, a real demonstration of our commitment from Haranui into that space as well. So if you're comfortable
Very
with
happy
that,
with
Brett,
that,
then
yes.
I'm sure that we can collaborate together. And
Scott?
yeah, I'm keen to continue that work. Okay, so in that case, Chris, are you comfortable with that?
I offered it, so I'm comfortable. I just worry about our representation and with the bearing with Waimak. If we do have enough numbers in that room to actually be heard correctly, that would be something that I would like to present through the chair and make that noted.
Yeah, sure.
And if my services are needed again, I'm more than happy to step in.
And certainly Food Security North Canterbury do offer a number of events and meetings across the district, and well, districts really, Waimakariri and Haranui. So potentially, you know, there's always an open door there for anyone to attend.
My differential in that would be that areas are different.
Absolutely.
Social communities are very
Absolutely.
different, and the trust and distrust of different communities has to be, particularly up where I am, has to be considered, and it would be wise to make sure that that is heard. If it's going to reflect on their day to day, they're rather a passionate environment at Waikari.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you've got to have thick skin when you go in there. But they're also very, very successful. So I'm just looking after that. Again, if I'm needed, I'm more than happy to step in and be available.
Yeah, and I think that's been well heard by certainly Brett, myself, and I'm sure Jackie, to ensure that we do get that representation that is district wide.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it.
Okay. So, oh, sorry.
On that Food Security North Canterbury, is there just one representative from Waimak on that?
On the working group, on the proposed working group.
Yes.
Well, at this stage, I'm the first one that's presented to be asking for this. We've had a conversation with Enterprise North Canterbury, which hopefully they will be having somebody that will be there to be having a seat around that table. Brent Cairns is already in Food Secure North Canterbury, so he would be the likely one that would be forming the working party. But that's all I know point, at this point.
That
This
was
is a
my-
newly formed
yeah.
group.
My only concern was if, you know, they've only got one from Waimak and then all of a sudden we'll put
Yeah.
two on it, but I just think, you know, just depends how that
If I may,
working group actually works, or,
if I
yeah.
may say, it's still supposed to be a collaboration and it's not supposed to be necessarily Waimak and us. And certainly when I'm at the Food Secure North Canterbury table, it's very much a collaboration. It's not, you know, them and us.
You certainly never get a feel of any boundaries there. It's just a sharing of information, ideas, resources, and it is quite fruitful, in my opinion. Yeah. But that's a point well raised. And if that were the case, then I'm sure that, you know, Brett and I could fight it out. No, we could share the position.
Yeah, I think just need to be aware of it.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so looking for someone then to move that we receive the food security update report and that we appoint Brett and myself to represent Haranui District Council.
I'm happy to come forward with that, please.
Thanks for that, Chris. I'm all good to do this. I don't have a conflict of interest with my name.
Madam Chair, not for appointment as council reps to groups.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Chris. And then someone to second. Thanks, Chris. I think I'll take them over there. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, then I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? That's carried. Thank you so much, Jackie, for your wonderful ongoing work.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing how the working group forms and progresses and works together.
Thank you.
And thanks for your fulsome report as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yep, that's great. So we are going to move to 3.2, which is the rainwater harvesting update on the public workshops from Haljan, because Stephanie is going to come in after morning tea to present the Northern Pegasus Bay bylaw review. So welcome to the table, Haljan. I'm just going to hand straight over to you, but I will say I attended one of the workshops and it was very informative, and I felt was exactly what the committee had in mind when they made that request. So page 45.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. And so I take that the report is read, and so I'll provide sort of just the key points, a summary here. And so this report provides an update on the rainwater harvesting workshops that were requested by the committee, well, the strategy and community committee in May 2025 to gauge community interest on rainwater harvesting. And so following that direction, public workshops were held in Hanmer Springs and Amberley on the 11th and on the 14th of May respectively, and with afternoon and evening sessions held at each location. So council officers delivered the workshops alongside local residents experienced in rainwater harvesting, who themselves shared practical insights from their own experience harvesting rainwater. So in terms of attendance, public attendance, there were 7 attendees across both sessions in Hanmer Springs, and as I sort of was talking to other colleagues and the council, this was good by Hanmer standards, and was really good attendance in Amberley with 24 attendees across both sessions. So the workshops itself, they focus on the role of rainwater harvesting and improving household resilience during emergencies and natural disasters. So we focus on this messaging as we thought that this would sort of resonate very well with the community members, while also acknowledging that there are other co-benefits as well. During the workshops, we covered practical matters such as tank options, maintenance requirements, relevant building and planning requirements. So there were several key themes that emerged from the feedback. So first of them was that cost was generally not viewed as a major barrier. So there wasn't a lot of, there wasn't any at all, sort of feedback around cost being a barrier to installing rainwater harvesting systems, because we emphasize on, there are a range of cost-effective options for rainwater harvesting. But I did note that the participants were predominantly sort of the older bracket, age bracket, who may have greater financial capacity and also time at hand as well. Interest may be strongest among particular groups, especially gardening groups, could be school environmental programs, and also residents interested in improving household civil defence preparedness. And feedback from attendees also said that they valued access to reliable information at one spot, rather than having to go around trying to find information in multiple sources, from multiple sources. And they also expressing interest in council continue doing this type of sort of activities. But then they also said that not everybody likes to go on sort of social media or sort of websites, and so perhaps a mix of communication methods is needed to reach more people on this. So overall, the workshops confirm that there's community interest in rainwater harvesting, particularly among specific sectors in the community, and council's role is best focused on providing accessible, practical information to support residents themselves making informed decisions. And as a result of the workshops, officers will continue to maintain and expand the information that we currently hold. We'll post them on our website, and we will also include other community-led examples as well, and making sure that information is readily available through a mix of channels. And so the recommendation that this report, from this report, is that the information is to be received. Thank you.
As I said, I attended one of those workshops, and I found it really refreshing to have a combination of presentation by officers, but also by locals. For us here, it was Nick Gill, and he talked through a range of different options, and with an awareness that different residents might be looking for different levels or have different space accommodations. So I certainly left feeling like any information that I needed or any advice, I could just pop into council, and it would be forthcoming. So in my opinion, it was a very positive way to go about it. And I certainly took the information to the, I guess I'll call them subcommittee groups around the area, and handed it to those who were interested. Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Brett.
Thank you. Through the chair, not so much a question but a comment. I've had a lot of people approach me, primarily I think because I was in that photo promoting it, but I've been able to take people through that misconception of the cost side of things, that there are much cheaper alternatives around. So it's been really heartening, and it's got some people from no, I can't do this, to yeah, I can definitely do that. So for a significantly reduced cost, and the ease of which it is once it's up and running. So I've found it really good. Really good.
And I think that was actually really another positive aspect of the campaign, if you like, was you are quite front facing as a councillor and in the community, and accessible to people. So I think that was great.
Great time.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, any further comments or questions, discussion? Oh, well, in that case, thank you, and thank you for the work with providing those workshops. Okay, so I'll move that the information be received. Someone can second that. Thank you, Brett. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, abstentions, that is carried. Okay, given that it is 10:25, and our next discussion item is the Northern Pegasus Bay bylaw. I think Stephanie is expecting some external people potentially to be joining us, or certainly viewing that part of the meeting at around about 10:45. So I am going to propose that we break for morning tea now and that we are back at the table by 10:45.
45.
10:45.
Thank you, Chair.
That's just to allow for that organisation. Okay, thanks, Graham. And welcome back, everybody. And welcome to the table, Stephanie. Stephanie's here to take us through the Northern Pegasus Bay bylaw review and the summary of the survey feedback to date. And then Stephanie will talk to us about our next steps, I guess. Thank you.
Sorry, I just to have noted, I've received a response from Dave Hislop in regards to the Habits apology sent it to.
Sure. Graham, can you just help me out with the process for that?
Yes, ma'am, yeah, just move that as an apology. If the committee is happy to speak up to start, but I think the intention was that it was for the meeting.
Yep, sure. Thanks for moving that, Murray. Someone to second that apology? Thanks, Chris. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Abstentions? Then that apology is received. Thanks for that update. Sorry, Stephanie, interrupted. Okay, I'll just throw over to you and we'll hear about the summary of feedback, which I'm sure everyone has come well read and prepared.
Okay, so summary of the beach survey feedback. So as you know, I'm working on the Northern Pegasus Bay bylaw review. We're halfway through now. So I undertook a survey over summer. So that was from basically December to end of March to get feedback from beach users. So this was to help just inform information about what the issues are, the ideas for improvement, and kind of what people think of managing this area of coast. This was non-statutory consultation, so it wasn't required, but we decided to do it to get feedback from people to inform the process. So in terms of the survey, Appendix 1 is a copy of the questions that were asked. It was a mix of demographic information and so mix of quantitative and qualitative. So basic demographic information, whether you live in Haranui or elsewhere, what kind of activities you like to do at the beach, how often you go to the beach, that kind of information. Also, whether you're aware there are rules, and if you were, how you became aware of the rules, that kind of information. In terms of the qualitative, sorry, I'll do the demographic stuff first and I'll get to that. So the demographic info, that'll be on the screen now. So I've basically just presented this as pie charts, so it's easy to look at, obviously. So where do you live? Overwhelming majority lived in Haranui district, 82%. Some within Waimak, some Christchurch, and some other. Some of those were Lower Hutt, Ashford, and Kenzie district. So, but they're obviously very small proportion. In terms of how often do you visit? Predominantly it was daily or weekly. It's about
nearly 75%, I think that was. And then the others less, annually, seasonally, monthly, first time. So some people obviously might come here on holiday and then go there, so it'll be the annual thing. But predominant weekly and daily, and obviously a lot of people who live close to the beach go to the beach on a daily basis. Next one, we asked, are you aware of the rules? And if so, how did you learn about them? So just over half were aware that there are rules. Most people through signage, some through the council website and some through word of mouth. And then the other ones, lesser amounts, local newspaper, ECAN Ranger presence, social media and HTC. So I'll get over with that when I asked, are you aware of the rules? That doesn't necessarily mean people fully understand or are correct about their understanding of the rules necessarily. Just to note that there's just some things those people then wrote, I was like, okay, don't quite have them, but at least they have an understanding there are rules out there about managing. The next one, what activities do you usually do? See, in my report, I think I just mainly summarised walking and running and dog walking, but you can see here all the other ones. So 20% walking, running, dog walking, 15%. Various other things. Viewing the wildlife, visiting with kids, picnicking, social gathering. Water sports, obviously, important. Fishing, whitebaiting, photography, cycling. Of the other, there are a few, they tend to be just, we had only a few responses on those. They were, some people come to go game bird hunting, collecting rubbish, predator trapping, looking for fossils, although that person, they actually, when I looked at their comments, they were actually talking about further up the coast, not actually the boat area. So there's a whole range of things that people do there. And then the next question on this one was, what do you enjoy about this part of the coast? So there's a few, I guess, that came up close to home and easy access for probably a big chunk, but also peaceful and quiet, scenic views, generally safe, not busy, can do the activities I want to do, wildlife biodiversity, cultural significance and other were a lot lower, and then family friendly, 6%. And a lot of the comments you get with this as well, I know I can bring my kid here and it's safe, or you know, I can do my surfing here and not, you know, I'm basically on the beach alone, that kind of thing. Kind of things that were important to people. Okay, and then we get on to the key themes. So this was the qualitative information. So we've seen Appendix 1, which had all the questions. The way I worded those questions, so in Appendix 1, the first page of the demographic. So qualitative questions, they were quite broad. So the first one I had was, while visiting this park, have you experienced any issues you would like to tell us about? So I'll talk about that in a minute. Next one was, is there anything you think needs improving about this beach or area of coast? And then the last question I had was, is there anything else you would like to add about your experience in this part of the coast? So just to note, when I say this part of the coast, that's actually very broad. And like I said, people live always within the wild. You'll also see later on in my report in Appendix 4, there were issues that came up that were specific to the bylaw, and I have listed those out as issues. So some people did have a good understanding where it was, but some were just kind of saying anything and everything related to the coast issues they come across. So the key themes that came through, one which I was expecting was vehicle access. So the community is divided on that. Retain current vehicle access was about a quarter that we got. Ban or remove vehicle access, 32%. But nearly half was control and manage the vehicle access. And that kind of mirrored just comments I've had anecdotally said to me directly as well. A lot of people saying, well, the rules are actually perfectly fine. It's just they're not really that well enforced. So that's kind of mirrors that came. Other key themes, environment, environmental protection. So impact on particularly of vehicles and dunes, wetlands and wildlife habitats and the concern around that. Minority causing problems, recurring themes that, as I've said, most people behave responsibly. It's a very small amount that then cause issues. And this particularly comes through with the vehicle access rules. People technically. This is also closely linked with the approved assessment. So the next issue was enforcement, or next thing. Widespread concern that existing rules are not being effectively enforced. Many respondents considered the rules are appropriate that we already have, but are undermined by limited monitoring and enforcement, particularly in relation to unsafe vehicle use, environmental damage, and other non-compliant actions. So those are the overall kind of themes that came through. I then looked at particular issues that were raised, which basically mirror the theme. So motor vehicles, dominant concern. Within that, there are a whole lot of subcategories that came through. So unsafe driving behaviour, antisocial driving behaviour, feeling unsafe, say when you're with your family, with your kids, people coming towards you, driving too fast, being in the dunes and people shouldn't be in the dunes. So there's kind of a whole lot of things that came out within the vehicle access issue. Increasing vehicle numbers overall, community tensions between users. So things like people who obviously value being able to access the beach with their vehicle and drive on the beach. And there are a number of people actually do it within the rules, of course, and people who think there shouldn't be any vehicle access, and the people in between who think actually most vehicles are okay, it's just the odd person kind of room. Reduced enjoyment of natural environment, enforcement widely seen as insufficient, as we'll talk about. Unclear or ignored signage, so quite a lot of commentary around it's good when there are signs, but we probably need more, particularly at various access points. However, sometimes signs do become a bit of a target though for some people, so kind of more discussion about how, I guess, how that could be improved and how in particular. Perceived lack of council support and rubbish and dog control recurring problems. So rubbish was mainly there aren't enough rubbish bins down at the beach, or I see rubbish dumped and that kind of issue. Dog control, that was mainly dogs off leads running up to people. Not necessarily, I think, not necessarily angry or aggressive dogs, but just feeling unsafe when a dog was running up to you, just that kind of thing, which is more of a separate issue under a dog control bylaw rather than this one, but obviously you're within the beach environment doing an activity. So the other one there was, of course, people cleaning up after their dogs. That was as well. And then ideas for improvement. So these were basically summarised into these ones. Better enforcement and monitoring of better vehicle access management, protection of sensitive environments, clearer and more visible signage, more rubbish, education awareness, and support for community groups. With the community groups, so we had some comments about, particularly when people said we're concerned about the environmental impact on the dunes, but then also comments about, for example, Hurunui Coast Care, about they're doing awesome work, why don't you give them more money, why isn't council kind of actively more supporting that kind of thing, because they're actually doing good work down there. So comments around that. Education awareness, and also the perceived lack of kind of council involvement, I said previously, just kind of a lot of comments around just lack of presence. Like one of the options I had for how did you know about the rules, one was HDC officer presence, and that was actually quite low because we don't actually actively go and monitor and enforce down there. ECAN rangers, in our previous workshop we talked about ECAN rangers patrol for us, and they do obviously get seen or more visible. They're normally there on the weekend though, and I have had comments about people who want to go down there and break the rules, they kind of know when they're going to be there, so they avoid the ECAN rangers, so issues like that coming through. But even though ECAN does the monitoring for us, there's the issue of, I never see HDC people down there. Is why aren't they, you know, just down there talking to people about the rules when they're driving on the beach, so things like that. Yeah, and there were, I haven't put it up here, but I'm happy to take questions about in Appendix 4, there were just other issues that came up that weren't underneath the bylaw. Bit of commentary there around the Amberley Bund, the fishing trawling boat off the coast, get a lot of comments about that, and I've had that anecdotally as well, which is obviously an EPI issue, but it comes up continually, people are concerned about that and the impact on the environment. A few other things in there. They didn't tend to be a huge amount of issues, but it was, So for example, the bund, people would put quite a lot of comment in there about it, wouldn't just be kind of a one-line thing. So obviously there was concern coming through about a few of those things. Erosion, storm damage and flooding of the coast and just kind of how that affects general people in general. Bit of commentary around the road to the golf course and why mixed views on public funding for a road that predominantly serves a private golf course. There's quite a bit of, as I said, when people comment on it, there's quite a bit of commentary around the annoyance around that. And just kind of general comments there, which I've all listed. Happy to take any comments for discussion.
Through the chair, if I could just ask a couple of questions. One is, I recall a presentation we had from the Waimak District Council in relation to, you know, what they've done, things like that, and how they engaged with local four-wheel drive groups, and in particular with the river access, where they had it available and then not available for a period of time. Did this survey go directly to, or did we get any feedback unsolicited from local four-wheel drive groups about how they see access and where they could go?
Through the chair. So not specifically, some of the comments would be from people who obviously do use four-wheel drives, and
Yes.
probably are in some of those clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't specifically necessarily target them. We one of the issues I have found is, I guess, knowing who to target and how representative they are as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
If I could just also ask, I would have loved to have seen a question, because I know we sort of touched on it, just as an option. The left field option was a dedicated area for four-wheel drive users, so we could hopefully direct some of them into one area and at least contain it. So I would have loved to have seen that question, would you support a dedicated area there? Because I don't think it's feasible for us to stop them completely, but if we could hopefully manage it a little bit better by giving them an area. I mean, I would ideally not like to do that, but I would have loved to have seen that question to see what the response might have been from people in relation to it's an option. Thank you.
Chris.
Thanks for that. Is it correct that we had 211 responses to
Yes.
that? I was just thinking, obviously we're getting more and more vehicles, and partly as our own population grows, but also with the other end of Pegasus being shut to vehicles more and more, they're obviously pushing them up this way, so it's becoming more and more an issue. From the workshop, my understanding is it is actually police that is meant to enforce speed restrictions and whatever else that goes on there, but obviously it's not a high priority. I had wondered, is it worth having on the signage that you've got a speed limit, but please contact police? Then people know that it is actually a police matter, not a council matter. Like, just stop that confusion that we're not doing anything about it. Just a suggestion. Yeah, I know what you're sort of saying. People want to see a higher council presence down there, which would actually help stop some of that. But I certainly see the other side of it too, that people going, oh, pretty cruisy job for the council, spend a day driving up and down the beach, ratepayers' money. So yeah, I think that's a wee bit of a hard one. More presence, yeah.
Through the chair. That's probably a good idea, having that on there. So yes, the police would enforce obviously all the relevant road rules, and a beach is a road. Yeah, so that comes in there. But as you say, it's basically low priority for them. A separate issue is under the bylaw, because the speed limits are 50 k's, and then when you're near a person down to 30 k's, whether you can realistically drive that slow on a beach and still be safe. So I've also had, I didn't specifically ask that in there, but I've just had comments about it as well, like slowing down to 30. Yeah, so there's kind of that so sometimes you actually have to drive it faster for safety. And actually the EK also came and talked to us. One of them, yeah, he said, I can't drive it, you wet start, you can't actually do, so there's kind of that operational issue as well, I guess, or whether we want to increase it slightly or be more realistic of what's still on the ground. But yes, it's a police matter.
Just another thought I had, you did talk about signage becoming a target. And I just wonder if there's not actually that many access points, cameras would be an option. One, it sort of deters people from destroying signs, but also one way of monitoring who is actually on and off the beach at different times. So if there is vandalism or on the beach, or issues on the beach, at least we sort of got a bit of an idea who's down there. So if it's an option or not.
Thanks for that, Chris. Chris Patrick.
Through the chair, I understand the speed limit on there. The issue with the soft sand, so the speed limit, I spent many years of surf lifesaving in my teenage days, not that you believe it now. And it was always a problem on the beach. The speed limit's relative below the high tide mark. Above the high tide mark, there is a differential, and I believe that some places, I can't answer for this beach, there is a split on that. That would be worth looking into. As for getting stuck in the sand, as being someone who used to spend time on the beaches in a vehicle, we used to blow the air out of our tyres and carry out foot pumps, and that gets you out of anything pretty much, and that's the standard way. I don't subscribe to that statement that they have to go faster. Having had experience there, I would debate against that need. It's just showing lack of knowledge of actually soft driving. Go to the outback of Australia, you soon learn very quickly how to get out of sand. So it is attainable. You just blow your ear out of your tyres, you soften them, they grip, they dig you out. And if worse comes to worse, you slap a piece of 4x2 on the wheel and it drags you out as well. So I think we need to consider that with your signage, mention, and I refer back to Chris's other statements regarding the signage. If we put a speed limit on the signage, and is there an area where there's a medium map somewhere where the area is blocked out with black lines going, you cannot go there on the sign, explaining the actual physical entity of where you can't go, or is it just telling you in words? Is there a map? I haven't seen one when I've been there. I went to have a look. You know what I mean? You've got a map of the area and then you've got black lines over saying, do not go on this point here. Have we tried to do something like that to date?
The chair, no, we don't have maps like that.
Yep.
I think that's probably a good idea. One of the issues is, not issues, but things to work within is you need to drive below the high tide mark, but you need to access it kind of at the shortest point that's safe. But that might vary a little bit depending on what's happening on the beach on that day.
I understand.
But generally speaking, yes, it's below the high tide you can, not above it.
Are we going to consider, as we go forward, this is more of a statement, through the chair, are we going to consider having designated entry points that are not necessarily cameraed for control? Because, I mean, as a good idea as it is, the vandalisation and ongoing maintenance costs who pick that up. But I'm thinking if we were to have designated entry areas that allow vehicles through, and that has been, in that point you mentioned, control, vehicle access management is how you've identified, you know.
Through the chair, so there are basically vehicle access points at the moment. The part of the issue with that is people go in where they shouldn't.
Yeah.
I think at the north end of the bund, people, for example, go in near Kimberley Beach, even though you can go further up and go in an actual vehicle access way. But yeah, that's one of the things to explore is whether there's basically in effect engineering works we can do to control that better or not. Yeah.
So Stephanie, it seems like this would be a good time to just outline the next steps in the process, so that anyone who's in the room or listening online is aware of, you know, where to now. Yes.
Okay, so yeah, the next couple of months of drafting and issues and options paper. So I've talked previously in some workshops about with the bylaw, you have to look at what is the perceived problem. In the legislation it says perceived, not actual. In reality, you're looking at what is the actual problem as well. So basically, what is that and what's changed in the last 10 years? And is a bylaw still the most appropriate way of addressing the perceived problem? So the issues and option paper will look at, okay, if we're retaining the bylaw, what do we, if that's the most appropriate way and what we need to be doing. If we don't have a bylaw, what we do, whether it's a strategy or a policy, whether we don't have a bylaw, whether we could still do things like engineering works to block, limit access points and things like that. So there's kind of a whole range of questions to be explored there. And then I'd bring that issues and options paper looking at September to a council workshop to discuss that, like basically what our direction will be, whether we're still going with the bylaw or not. One of the other questions in there is it still the most appropriate way to deal with it, but also, so but within that, once you tease it out, it's do we actually have the resources to support this bylaw? Because arguably a lot of our feedback is said, no, we don't. Yeah, sorry.
I have a question, if I may, through the chair. Do you feel that in the past we've executed and informed on the bylaw adequately for the public, or are we perhaps a little bit lapse in supplying that information adequately and controlling? I know it's a tricky question, but I'm just trying to fathom that we don't fall into a world of expenditure that really, when the problem is our delivery, maybe. I'm just asking.
Through the chair. So sorry, you're talking about more about information for people or how
I
we
feel-
can monitor and
Well,
respond?
if the information's there, but also the execution at the point. So when people arrive at the beach, we've already worked out signage needs to change, things like that. I'm just thinking if historically we haven't done such a good job, we could have done better, which we all can. That's just like, it's not a criticism, it's just an observation. And if that was the case, then if we're going to go down the law of changement, we're going down to changing the bylaws or looking at processes to change, when actually the problem isn't maybe there, it could be at our execution, at our end of doing what we have to do under the legislation, our end signage, etc. Is there somewhere there without costing funds that we can maybe improve on or look to, in your opinion?
So that's probably, I'll present that more in the issues and options paper, but
Yes.
I'd say historically, probably no, we haven't resourced this properly. So in the bylaw, there's 3 key issues: impacts of high recreation use on the dune systems and on the wildlife and vegetation of the estuaries and lagoons, disturbance and destruction of foreshore habitats, and conflicts between incompatible recreation activities. So those issues are why we did the bylaw 15 years ago. So there's still disturbance and destruction of foreshore habitat happening. So you could argue we haven't responded appropriately. I just also add that there was a comment before about obviously vehicles moving further north, and that's something that I've heard a lot anecdotally throughout this process. I did find a paper from, I think it was 2001, 2002, Christchurch City, and it was basically a paper where they decided to cut off vehicle access to most of their beaches. And as part of that, they actually said, oh, okay, we should help support Waimak and Huranui because it's going to become a problem further north. And of course it has. And then Waimak has closed more of their off, and it has. So I've been told it a lot, but yes, it's basically what has actually happened, but we kind of haven't then responded. I guess the idea of having a dedicated area is one option. A dedicated four-wheel drive track area. I guess that would have a whole commitment to do that. I mean, it's one idea, but yeah, how that would be done. And I guess also just managing, you could provide that, but people might still do it. People might still be having bonfires on Ashfield Beach at 2 in the morning and neighbours feeling unsafe.
If I could just say, ask, or sort of maybe make a statement through the chair. I was surprised really that with the key themes there on page 41, vehicle access, you've got community is divided on vehicle access. Not really divided, it's nearly 70% support access in varying forms. So it's quite overwhelming people that do support vehicle access, be it as it is or more controlled. So I was surprised that the majority do. And then it's just policing or giving an area. As I say, my preference wouldn't be to give an area. But I remember the WIMAC presentation, and I did specifically ask, do you think your problem has been exported? And of course, that's difficult for them to say, but I believe it absolutely has. It's just going to shunt it down, as you mentioned, Christchurch thought that they should look at WIMAC and Hiranu because it would export the problem. They go away, they'll just come to where we are. So, as I say, the idea of a dedicated area isn't ideal, I know, but they've got nowhere else to go because once they get to the rocks, that's it. There's nowhere else to go. So we are kind of last man standing.
Murray,
Sorry.
No, and I mean, it's kind of skimming along the analysis there is what Brett has just identified, but I guess the question going forward, Stephen, maybe you could help with that, remains, is the bylaw the most effective means to manage, or would a strategy with education component be the best way to manage, you know, because as much as we would like to throw as much funding as we could into monitoring the bylaw, we may not actually get the desirable outcome, you know. So yes, I guess I was just sort of thinking with the information that you've analysed here, and I guess it'll come through your issues, not paper. You know, what is the best way to manage the issue that we're trying to solve here? You know, so I'm still kind of scratching my head over it, really. Yeah. So just a comment.
Fair comment. Yeah, I mean, not the bylaw. It's only as good as you can enforce, isn't it? Yeah,
right.
and that comes with a whole lot of resources.
100%.
Chris.
Through the chair, when I mentioned about the blackened off areas, I was referring to where you couldn't go, not where you could, just so we don't get our wires crossed on that element, because I felt that might have occurred. I still think that what I keep hearing is that we've got a bylaw. Very few people are really aware of it. 1 and 2 say they are, and they've stumbled over from our analysis, which what you've shown us. I just think it comes back to, instead of trying to change things, we have a bylaw, and as Brent has pointed out, I know when Christchurch shut off, I had property in South Spit and Brighton at the time. When I visited to check, I was told about how all that had been shut off, and I went and had a look, and they narrowed the access ways, they put the walkways through. It actually looked great, good, and it changed the format, and it moved north. We know that, it pressured through. The difference there is the monitoring is a lot easier to attain, whereas up here, that's pretty hard for us to afford to do, and to do it's pretty open space. From what I've read, and I read all this last night several times through to get my head around it, because it's something I'm interested in. I still keep coming back as, have we executed enough information sufficiently to the public so they understand it? And whether it be an emotional delivery or a blunt one, I don't know the answer to that. But I'm just wondering, because I just don't see us throwing any more money at this when we won't get a result unless we get the people to change their mental approach to how they're going. You're always going to have larrikins, you know, but the idea is to get one of the larrikins in that car to go, actually, Tom, Brill, Jim, whatever's, don't go there, to try and create that some way through signage, peer pressure, because that's where it's going to come from, for that little small percent who do most of the damage.
And Chair, Andrew would like to make a comment.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, look, I don't want to prejudice the discussion because I think it's really good, but I think whatever option we choose when we come to the September workshop, my observations of how Waimakariri dealt with it, there was an awful lot of awareness raising and education over quite a long period of time, 10 or 15 years from what I can recollect. So whether we go down a continued or amended bylaw or a policy or a strategy, personally, I think that awareness raising, and whatever that looks like through signage, social media, open days, that sort of thing, I think that certainly increase awareness and the success. And again, I don't want to prejudice the discussion, but with a bylaw, we may not do a lot of enforcement, but you have that option with a bylaw. With a policy or strategy, nice but you lose something there.
Thank you.
That'll be explained in more detail in September.
Murray.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess that's what I was thinking about a little bit before, you know, and to Chris's point, you know, to change or get Bob at that moment, to have that consciousness
Yeah.
to say, hey, guys, let's not do that because of blah. If we could, you know, and that will be a long game,
Yeah.
I suspect, you know, that, and to your point, it could, or if someone said, you know, it could be 10 or 15 years, but actually we can't lose sight of the fact that that is probably going to get a better, more resilient or long-term action if we can apply that. That's, yeah, so I'm interested to, if we get to that
It'll
point,
change
because-
the culture of the persons in the community that they were in, to their children, etc. So it's a long-term effect doing it that way. Sorry, that's right.
Just as another comment, I mean, I think that even if we, you know, I think about my generation and grandchildren's generation now, the consciousness raising that is done through, you know, their teaching, just their whole care and understanding of the environment, and, you know, so if we could wave or get on that wave of
Right.
change, you know, would seem like that would be a good place for us to be spending our time and precious financial commitment to get the right outcome rather than the, you know, career views that we carry.
I mean, that is
Yeah.
the methodology that's often used with recycling and other environmental
Yeah.
issues.
That's right.
Is actually if you can catch the young people
Yeah.
and then get them to, you know,
Mhm.
impart that, you know, to the other generations. Yeah. Chris.
Just a couple of things. It was an interesting comment that Christchurch City Council said that they would help support Waitangi and Haranui. I don't know what that support actually means or if anything's ever happened on that front. Yeah, I guess it's just a comment. It's just it'd be nice to get some financial
Yeah. We dig that out. Was there a resolution?
Best of luck. But yeah, I think the problem, I think Andrew's right, you know, a bylaw is good because it gives you that resource to reinforce it if it's needed. And as you say, the problem is with a bylaw like this, where you are allowing people or vehicles onto the beach, or some vehicles, and I think Waimea alluded to, they've still got this issue, they allow vehicles onto the beach for fishing. So if somebody's got a fishing net in the back of their truck, does that sort of give them access? And so there's always grey areas. And unless you go to likes of Christchurch City Council, where they've just closed beaches to vehicle access, then it's black and white if you've broken the rule or not. And so I think that's always going to be an issue we'll have. And I guess the other side of it is I understand Brent's comment that, you know, if they can't go on the beach here, there's not another beach further north they can sort of go, that's the end of the road type thing. But the other side of it is, you know, if people aren't sticking to the rules, well, they don't actually have to be on the beach. I mean, we could actually create a bylaw to say, sorry, no people access on the beach, and it's tough bickies. I mean, we're still within our rights to do that if that's the best for the environment and everybody else that's using it. So I agree, it's nice to be nice to these people, but if they're not being nice, then you just got to say, well, sorry, tough bickies, you broken the rules. Yeah, you lose your privileges.
Showing a small percentage can cause change. Yeah, I know, and it's always 1 or 2% if you're running.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I guess I'm just keen to come back to the next steps for those people who are listening in. You know, Stephanie, you've talked about workshopping and considering whether a bylaw is the right methodology here, and I just want those people who are listening to understand the process following that it won't just be a decision made, you know, in a workshop, but that there is actually another full process of consultation in regards to what he was decided.
Thank you. So there'll be the workshop, and that will basically give me direction of what I want to do, basically. And then after that, I would then go and draft up that option, get legal advice, get consultation material. If we do opt to go for another bylaw, there's obviously a formal LGA process of consultation that has to be gone through. And that's a minimum of 1 month. That will likely be early next year, and then hearing of submissions. As I said, if we did go for another bylaw, it has to be in by 1st July next year. So that's when the current one automatically votes. If we decided another option, then you'd have to look at the general LGA consultation requirements. Is this something probably our community want to comment on? Which probably would be yes, and just form up a consultation plan around that about if it's no longer going to be viable, what else we're going to do, but also what we're putting around it, or whether we go different options. Or just one other comment I'd like to add is there was a bit of discussion before about further up north. I did get a few comments also about beaches further up north and why isn't the bylaw, why is it stop at Henley Rocks? I did have one person commenting on issues with vehicles in Gore Bay, which I haven't heard a lot of, just the one basically, but that someone was asking that as well. Why isn't it our why is it just stopping here? So which comes back to, I guess, how we manage the environment of those beaches and all that. It doesn't seem to be a massive issue further north, but that if we did something here, we'd have to be aware of what that could create elsewhere.
Yes, yeah, and if it kicks the can down the road, so to speak, as has happened with Christchurch and Waimakariri. Yeah, absolutely.
Gore Bay is a strange one. And I'm a regular there. Normally you see the tractor with the boat on it. That's about it, really. That's all I've ever seen there, and the occasional quad bike with fishing gear strapped on the back going down to the reef. So it's interesting that they've had issues there. Hard to get on to.
Okay, so I note that we know we're being asked to receive this information, so I just want to be sure that everybody has had an opportunity to comment or to ask questions before we look at receiving that information. Okay, thank you very much for the report, Stephanie, and for the summary. It certainly makes for interesting reading, and I was surprised by some of the results there actually. So is there somebody of a mind to move that we receive this information? Thanks, Brett. Have a seconder? Thanks, Chris Scott. Any further comment? Okay, all those in favour, please say aye. Against? Abstentions? And we'll look forward to the continuation of this process and whatever outcome it may lead to. And for anyone who is watching, they can look on the HDC website and see what those next steps are and the potential timeline for those. Page 34, the agenda. Yes, definitely. Okay. Discussion item 3.3, Together Hurunui Changing Priorities, which is on page 50. Welcome to the table, Joe. You're here presenting on behalf of Natalie. Yeah. Welcome. Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah.
And thank you, Andrew, for your support. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So yes, Chair Councillor White said I'm updating on behalf of Natalie. She's at the Welcoming Communities Annual Conference, which is 2 days. So Natalie here wears 2 hats. She's part-time employed as the Welcoming Communities Facilitator through Council, and then part-time facilitator for Together Hurunui, which is hosted by us. So I'm just going to outline as best I can the report that you have in front of you, some key things to note, and why we're bringing it to this strategy group. So just for those newish to the council table, I just wanted to share some history with Together Hurunui, because certainly when myself and I do the ops report updates, we often talk about some of the priorities and areas of Together Haranui and how it partners with the community team, and there's a huge synergy there. So back in 2014, the Greater Canterbury Community Response Model Forum undertook a survey and wellbeing survey in the Haranui, which resulted excuse me, in a Haranui community report. That report identified social isolation as a key issue affecting some of our communities, and had some proposed priorities that sat within it to address those. Subsequently, moving through the timeline, 2015, Together Haranui was established, and as it is today. So Together Haranui is a collective of key social service support providers that service our district, from health, education, police, community members and wellbeing, and chaired by our Mayor Mari. It's governed by a steering group, and the operational partnership side sits within the community team. So we host the role, so day-to-day management of the role, but it is governed by the steering group, which sits outside of the council. Since the inception, there's been varying priorities that the group have gone through, determined at those points in time of what was needed, what was being identified, and previous to these last couple of years, the network of social services came together on a quarterly basis, often a connection point for services, servicing Haranui, but sharing key priorities and learnings. How that's evolved is since 2023, the focus has shifted to more localised, what we call stakeholder huis. So Natalie meets with those, essentially the network, but on a micro level in each of our key areas. So there's a Hamna, Amuri, Harden, Waikari, Cheviot, Amberley. And what that's created is a real in-depth, close lens and intention on what the needs are in those spaces. From that, trends have been identified. So you will have heard previously about the adult social, older person social worker project, which was mirrored sort of across the district. So they provide real insight at a local level, but also provide a snapshot of Haranui and where there are trends across the district and where there are specific needs in specific areas. So the previous focus has sat around 3 priority areas: mental health, poverty, drug and alcohol harm reduction. And as I mentioned, those priorities have evolved. The work that Natalie does focuses really intently on those priority areas, but where the direction is shifting in the next calendar year is those issues are still really pertinent in our community. So those 3 areas are still core priorities, but what has emerged has been, and you'll see in point 9, a move to some additional priority areas. So children and youth and service provision gaps essentially have been added to those priorities. We see a lot of services that on paper serve Haranui, but in practice, the level of service can differ very much depending on that particular service area. So some intentional, a bit of focus, a bit of lens on some of those service gaps is the direction moving forward. In terms of how Together Haranui aligns with council strategy, it definitely sits in that enabling community space. It is, as I mentioned at the beginning, it is a partnership. Together Haranui partners with Haranui District Council. It's not delivered by Haranui Council. It is very much community informed and social service informed. And the benefits of that for us in certainly in the community team is the intel and the partnership working on joint initiatives where we can collaborate to best support within our community. So just wanting to give this committee a bit of an update of where the direction of next year those priorities are looking to sit, and that's really just for an awareness raising purpose more than anything. But also, as you hear about Together Haranui, and its connection with some of the work that happens in the community team, particularly Jackie, who you heard of earlier from the food security space. You know, a number of those initiatives have come from that Together Haranui, highlighting and identifying those on the ground. So I think I'll, through the chair, leave it there in terms of just summarising that two-page report, and I'll do my best to field any questions.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jo. It's really good to have had that thorough explanation of where those new priorities have come from and why. Yeah, so thank you for that. Appreciate that. Questions or comments? Seems like we must have done an absolutely stunning job of summarising on behalf of Natalie. So well done. Oh, Chris has just thought of
I
something.
won't let you down on something.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome. It's all good through the chair. 9 new priorities, mental wellbeing on the point of 9 on this. You mentioned the service provisions gaps. Have we identified those by any chance, or are we aware that are we aware which parts of those services are those gaps?
Through the chair, in some instances, I mean, given the example of the older persons that Natalie and Mari worked on, you know, with the medical centres, that's come through that space.
Yeah.
But those services emerge. What Natalie is doing is a little bit of a stock take on some of the services that operate in Haranui, but what that actually looks like on the ground, because we hear anecdotally through the stakeholder whois some of the services, particularly, for example, in the school, supporting around child and mental health and wellbeing or family violence, can differ depending on the relationships. So there's work to do in terms of understanding that better. Through the chair, I don't know, Mari, if you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. It's amazing. There's a lot of contractual awareness to say that the services will be delivered into the Haranui district, but there's actually not a whole lot of evidence to say that that is happening. And through the stakeholder hui that Natalie has created on behalf of our district, that is exposing further where those provision gaps are. And I think the older person social workers are really good evidence of that information gathering and action focus to minimise or close that gap. So that's, yeah, does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Through the chair again. So when later in the year we'll no doubt get some direction on those areas and be able to understand it a bit more, do you feel?
Yeah, so through the chair, as I say, Together Haranui sits as its own entity and works closely within the council. Natalie is keen to update some more specifics around those stakeholder whois. So possibly either whether it's appropriate through this committee or through the operational committee, some of the actual findings and what they're seeing, just to be able to inform and give some insight into some of those kind of key gaps. So certainly that's an intention that we would like Natalie to speak to, because she lives and breathes that space and is on the coalface with all those services. So certainly, yeah, that can come.
Thank you very much.
Great, thanks for that, Jo. Okay, if there are no more questions or no further discussion, then I'll move that the information be received. If someone could second that. Thanks, Mari. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, abstentions, carried. Thank you very much, Jo, for presenting on Natalie's behalf, and we will look forward to being updated via the community team update and ops all back here, whichever is feels like the correct pathway. Thank you for that. Okay, and our final item for today, information item 4.1, page 63, the committee work program update. Andrew, thank you. So straight over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, councillors. Yeah, so this is a regular update to the committee. I'm just going to dive straight into it. You've already heard from the Northern Peninsula Bay bylaw that's tracking along quite nicely. and we've signed off on the drones over council reserve land policy, so that's going on. I anticipate gambling policy will come to the committee in the September meeting for approval. That seems to be tracking along quite nicely. And similarly with the complaints, compliance and enforcement policy, again, hopefully in September, although we're still seeking some feedback from internal stakeholders. So that will be subject to getting that relevant feedback from them. Asbestos risk management policy, potentially allocated to an internal officer for review. I'll have a chat later this afternoon rather, just to confirm that. Again, that will be subject to their capacity. The whole work program is subject to capacity. So, yeah, so some of the capacity issues, for example, are the officer that we've got doing the bulk of the policy work program. She's also involved in some fairly chunky resource consents and monitoring of the consents. So, for example, the Mount Cass wind farm, she's involved in the monitoring of that, and there's, I think, regular fortnightly meetings she's got to attend, and yeah, so making sure the rest of the planning team's work program trucks along, so good to make sure the consents processed in a timely manner. Asset management policy, I believe that's coming to the September meeting as well. Yeah, that's been drafted by Dan Harris. I have hoped to get an update on proposed plan change X, which is a transport chapter plan change. I think at the last briefing, we'd suggested that it's something we want to progress, but we'll need to get approval from the minister because there's a planned stop on plan changes. Most of them, from all accounts, do receive that verification we can proceed with it. But we still need to go through that process. So I'll have a chat with the council officer that's progressing that, and that's in tandem with the design, the development engineering standards. So that's, yeah. They both rely on each other. They both speak to each other. So to update one without amending the other, it sort of doesn't work. So they need to be sort of progressed in tandem.
The standards have to come first, wouldn't they, to set the ground form for the foundation for the next step, really close to each other as such. That might be accurate.
Tomato.
Yeah,
sort
I
of,
suppose that's, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the right phrase, but yeah, yes and no.
It makes sense. I get it.
There's a 3 services bylaw, and I need to talk to Steph about this. We were of the understanding that this was going to transfer to the WISCO, but bylaws, they don't have the powers to make a bylaw, councils do, and we just need to, I need to talk to Dan to figure out how that's going to be resourced. My understanding is that he was going to progress that, and we'll just keep a track of how that's progressing. So those discussions are still underway. And the reason I want to talk to Steph about it is because she's the guru on all things bylaws, and I'm a Johnny-come-lately and that sort of thing. The really exciting stuff is the Canterbury Regional Spatial Plan, and I'm sure you're all familiar with what that is and the potential timeframes. Yesterday, the amended planning bill was released. So it's come from Select Committee and going into Parliament for the second reading. I had a look through it. It's about 800 pages of the bill, the amended bill, and 200 pages of the Select Committee's justifications for amendments or not. So I'm still working my way through it. Hasn't changed a lot, but that will influence what the regional spatial plan looks like and the timing for it. Yeah, so there's a planning managers meeting this Friday to include discussion on progressing the regional spatial plan and. Yeah, well, you guys are probably all over this, I imagine.
Not so much at the moment, actually, to be honest.
Canterbury Mayoral Forum had an extraordinary meeting last week to progress the ability to help fund the regional spatial plan. It's not an insurmountable figure that has been considered. There's some discussion as to whether it needs to be $15 or $20 million or thereabouts. But Mayoral Forum supported Environment Canterbury, not unanimous, but supported Environment Canterbury debt funding that piece of work to enable, because when do we need it done by? Tight time frame again.
15 months after the bill received rules.
Yeah, so we need to be functioning and making that happen. Canterbury Mayoral Forum also supported the and I think it'll probably be mayors will sit on from each, we've got a nominated person on the planning committee or the planning professional. Yeah, sorry, and but there is provision for an alternative to attend those meetings as well. But this is a work needs to be actioned in a timely and appropriate manner, because the squeeze is on top of the time.
Yeah, right. Interesting, with the debt, I'm just pondering what that means moving forward into 2028 with the simplifying local government proposal on the table. But anyway, that's an aside.
Here's a desirable work.
Yeah, and I guess just to that, so the amendments that I did look at to the planning bill, they've added additional provisions that arguably may, and don't hold me to this, I'll deny all knowledge of it, it may make it easier to obtain the information that informs the spatial plan. So normally you'd go out and, because this is a statutory document, it needs to be more evidence-based than just sort of pie in the sky wishful thinking. We want to, big crayon marks on a map that say this is going to be here and that's going to be there. So so that means we could potentially use information that's already gone through statutory process. So regional policy statement information, district plan information, long-term plan information, including our infrastructure strategy, which will, on the face of it, make the process easier. On the face of it, I'll be able to let you know at the next briefing to what extent that is true. Okay. Yeah, it seems potentially easier.
So I introduced it on as representative from the planning managers group.
There's a planning managers,
I
think it's quarterly, so there's one coming up at the end of this week, and at the end of that, and there's a workshop with John Bartels, who's seconded from the Greater Christchurch partnership, into sort of, I think it's a day a week, to progress sort of the high end of the regional spatial plan and what that's going to look like. So
you said you was the rep on the planning managers group.
Okay,
That was the question.
Answer the question.
Thanks for that.
So happy to take any questions on the regional spatial plan. And then I think the last thing on the current work program is there's a couple of district plan changes that are slowly or quietly ticking away in the background. These are changes that ensure the plan gives effect to national environmental standards. So you recall there was earlier this year, I think January, the National Environment Standard for Granny Flats. And there's a more recent one, National Environment Standard for Papakainga. The district plan needs to reflect those. So we need to look at what does that mean? Is that just a simple note that says for Granny Flats, reference the NES, or do we need to make a more substantive change? So starting to tweak actual provisions to more explicitly ensure it aligns with the both NES. There's no need for that to be publicly notified. The RMA gives us that capacity to just do it in-house and then do a public notice to say this has happened. And the main point of it is to make sure that yes, the NES is out there and it provides sound direction, but if someone's not looking at that, they look at our district plan doesn't speak to the NES. So we're just going to make sure that it's consistent.
So those things are exempt from the government plan stop
Yes.
because they are
Yes.
legislative.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, okay.
That's all I've got. I won't go into table 2 from page 65, but I'm happy to take any questions. The only comment I would make is that those first 3 rows are things that could potentially be progressed through or in tandem with the regional spatial plan. I think I mentioned at our last catch up. So that's essentially looking at the Southwood spatial plan and do we need to rezone for XYZ uses?
Okay, so are there any questions? I think firstly on the first table of our program. Right, and any questions or queries in regards to table 2, which is the 12 to 18 month work plan in table 2?
Can I refer back, if I may, back to page 21 regarding the district plan changes? Just so my understanding is if we're doing a rent flat, we can go. What you're saying is we need to get that info on our site, so it's there and to be found in one space. That's my
So that it reflects the NES.
Yeah.
Because at the moment it says you need a resource consent, when the NES says you don't. Generally, no.
Well, it does here. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, perhaps just to clarify a little bit, this, we refer to this as the work plan team, it's actually the plan team's work program. Because this committee is a strategy and policy committee, and so you'll see that today we've actually had things from the community team as well. We're just working through that. It used to be the strategy and community committee, so it was an obvious place for the community team's updates and work to come. But now this is a strategy and policy committee. We are looking at, okay, is this the right place for some of the more operational updates to come? So where you may see a little bit fragmented with some things that are more strategic coming here and more operational appearing in the operations agenda. So you just see some change there. And I think if as councillors, if you're finding that that's too fragmented, then you need to give me that feedback and we can change things. But just feeling our way about where's the most appropriate committee for some of these things to go. And you'll see that actually MTFJ is going to council. So that's something, whereas all of those things used to come to this committee. So just, yeah, these will appear in various agendas.
It did cross my mind in regards to the last paper that we had for the changing priorities, but in my head I went, that's actually strategic. So yeah, I can understand
So the original cut of that report had a whole lot of operational things in it that were cut out because they were operational. So we just got to do a little bit of work on the operations committee, understanding that they're going to be getting some other things other than pipes and roads and footpaths.
Some very important things too.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry. If I can support what you just said, Pauline, I think it's a really important feature that we councillors get to hear through either operations in full council, the quality and the integrity of the work that up through now, this council has only been, this committee has only been privileged to hear, and this is often where some of that stuff outside of pipes and roads are equally important within the well-being, you know, scope of our district is. Yeah, we all hear about it, so we can all support it within our communities as well and promote that that side of our council business.
100% support that, and just think that it feels like we're all far more in tune, I think, with the community team and the particular work that they do, which is very valuable.
I would like to ask one more question, please, of Andrew through the chair.
Sure.
Page 66, the very last one, dangerous and sanitary and effective building policy. Yeah, that's, yeah. Could you give me some insight into that? Just about that.
Not right at the moment, I'd have to go and read the policy, but I'm happy to have a chat.
Yeah.
So the requirement under the Building Act that we have a policy, so this is for when we're showing section 1, 2, 4 notices, that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
Dangerous buildings, so we have to have a policy that supports us doing that.
Gotcha.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew, sort of something
Sorry,
else.
Madam Chair, there was two projects that are quite dear to my heart that have fallen off the table. Town or Central Amberley Master Plan, so several in the room were in attendance at a workshop we had earlier in June.
Yes.
Yeah. Reasonable attendance, but I think really good energy and some good ideas and good discussion, good brainstorming came out of that. So that's progressing. We're due to have a one-on-one with the consultant today. She is ill, so we'll catch up and be able to report back in at the next meeting in September about next steps. By then we will have progress beyond that, but essentially we'll be looking to consolidate all the information received and then report back to the stakeholders that were present, which is basically the businesses and other key stakeholders. So NZTA, they were present at the meeting, and they, I guess, provided a bit of a reality check to a degree about some great ideas that have been percolating within the community about how to manage State Highway 1. But there was other stakeholders, also ECAN were there. And then the other project was the reserve strategy. So we've extended out finalisation of that. We wanted to give the users of the reserves, especially the sports reserves, an opportunity to come back. This is what we've said. We said we don't actually need any more sports reserves in the over the life of the strategy. But you know, that's based on a fairly raw assessment. You tell us what your numbers of participation and needs are. We've had 3 or 4 sports come back. Probably going to have to cut it off at some point at the end of this month. Most of the feedback has been more about maintenance issues rather than we need more land. That's not to say that we won't, and yeah, that's what we're hoping to get from their feedback. That hasn't transpired at this stage, but we may look at where how we assess needs. And at the moment, we've based it on Amberley population. A valid point was raised when we went to the Reserves Advisory Group meeting 6 weeks ago now, I think it was. They said, well, most of our users, or a lot of our users aren't just living in Amberley. They could be further south, they could be further north. So we're looking to extend the population that we look at. So it'll be all of the South Ward population and into Waikari, probably up to Waipara, and maybe a little bit further north. It starts to get into a less scientific basis and a bit more sort of guesswork. But that's policy work anyway, to a large degree. And
sort of on the margins. So we'll hope to report again, maybe in September, with a draft strategy.
Great,
A
thank you.
final draft strategy.
Excellent.
And thank you for that update. Certainly the town centre planning is, you know, a lot of external interest outside the current stakeholders, and there's an understanding there that, you know, they'll be pulled in when the time is right for them, so, yeah. Okay, well, I believe that that is everything on our agenda today, and there is no urgent business. So the next meeting will be on the 15th of September. And so with that, I will close the meeting, 12:04. You can all have lunch before our workshops.